Dear colleagues, dear guests, due to the current COVID situation, we have decided to have this lecture online. Who are we and what are we talking about today? We are Frederica Nelly Arndorf, 3 artists experimenting with algorithmic noise music. 2 of us study mechanic engineering while I studied pedagogy and am currently studying art in the conceptual art class at the Academy. So today we want to talk about making algorithmic noise music, experimental noise music, Deleuze-inspired music, and rhizomatic musicology. Originally, we planned to record a day of the Rundgang and to have a sound performance at the end of this lecture. But because of the uncertain circumstances, we decided to postpone the music-making process and focus on a general overview of the aforementioned topics.
First of all, let's have a listen to what such an acoustic spacetime music landscape can sound like. Last summer, we recorded various spots at Karlsplatz and mixed them with the help of an algorithm that Felix programmed. We wanted to create a sound experience that would show Karlsplatz as one entangled spacetime. It sounded like this. Our term acoustic spacetime memory refers to the acoustical memory effect of ferroelectric crystals. These crystals are able to remember sounds for tens of microseconds. We use the term spacetime to refer to the inseparability and entanglement of time and space. Experiments have shown that if you send acoustical waves through a ferroelectric sample, it will briefly ring like a bell and then be quiet. But only a moment later, a tone with the same frequency and phase will reappear. Ferroelectric samples are able to store energy from the acoustical wave and then release it. This effect resonates with our work, as we capture noise, store it for a short period of time, and then release it again. However, in the short storage period, we don't intend to play back the noise exactly as recorded. With the help of an algorithm, we create a multi-layered, entangled response to the recorded noise. An overview of how we use such an algorithm to make music is now explained to us by Felix.
Now I would like to tell you a little bit about the technical aspects of our work. In general, algorithms are used to describe a process analytically. This process can contain many specific tasks and combinations. Usually, we feed the algorithm with inputs and gain some outputs. To describe complex algorithmic behavior, one can use boxes and arrows to visualize the process flow. The letters on the signal lines denote the signal number. If the number is arbitrary, we instead use the letter n. One of the commonly used but rather abstract elements is the so-called black box. With defined inputs and outputs, the process inside is assumed as unknown. This is a handy tool to abstract a complex process into one single unknown box, but this time we don't want to know what happens inside. In our art piece, we pick up multiple sound signals by microphones. These signals are then processed by an algorithm in the black box, utilizing multiple layers of randomness to automatically control many parameters of the sound. However, we restricted the ideal randomness slightly to present the sound with certain variation. Real randomness would just generate white noise. provide a representation of space to the algorithm, we place the microphones in different locations in the exhibition room, pointing at different directions. Ideally, this should happen randomly, and one would use a high number of microphones. Because we can only use a few, we agreed to place them strategically around the room to pick up a wide variety of sounds. To allow the algorithm not just to choose between different points and directions in space, but also in time, we add time delays to the system. The black box can now choose between every point in space and time from the start of the algorithm until now. Again, we can't add an infinite amount of time delays, so we record samples in regular time intervals. This restricts the algorithm to certain time frames, but is an efficient way of providing multiple time steps at once. At this point, our black box is randomly choosing and mixing signals from different points in space and time to create a singular output in the form of one sound signal. In the world of audio processing, things are starting to get interesting when one uses feedback. Therefore, we decided to close the loop and feed the produced signal back into the room. The idea is not to have direct feedback, like a speaker next to a microphone, but to capture the reactions and interactions of the people exploring the art piece and therefore contributing themselves. Let's now continue with the theoretical aspects of our work.
So now that we have given you a short overview of what we do and how we do it, let's move on to why we do it. Well, obviously because we like making music together, but there are a few ideas that we want to support with the kind of music that we make. I have already mentioned that we make Deleuze-inspired music. So who is Gilles Deleuze and how did and does he inspire music? Gilles Deleuze was a French philosopher who wrote on other philosophers like Spinoza and Leibniz, literature, film, and fine art. His most known and influential works are Capitalism and Schizophrenia, Anti-Oedipus, and 1,000 Plateaus, both co-written with psychoanalyst Felix Guattari. What makes Deleuze's philosophy so interesting and important to us are his thoughts on difference. I'll illustrate this with a simple example, which, by the way, you can also read up upon on Wikipedia. Let's say we're taking a thing X and say that it's different from this other thing Y. We are quick to presume that X and Y are fixed entities that exist in their forms before we mark them as different from each other. However, Deleuze argues that X and Y are already composed of differences, which are also composed of differences, and so on. So X is composed of the difference between X and the derivative of X. And Y is composed of the difference between Y and the derivative of Y. And that again is composed of differences, and so on. So there really isn't a thing before difference. So you could say that nothing is really separate from something else. No thing pre-exists difference.
Yeah, this is an important idea for our music making practice, as it shifts our focus to entanglements rather than separating entities. For us, being inspired by Deleuze means that we are interested in noise rather than clarity. We want to make entanglements audible, not separate sounds. We ask ourselves, how can we experience entanglement through sound?
Many scholars and artists have used Deleuze's idea as their starting point to make sense of the world. And basically that's what we're trying to do as well. Make sense of the world through sound. In sociology, for example, there are concepts like entanglement from Karen Barad or hexiety from Elizabeth Adams-St-Pierre to describe life and experiences as rhizomic rather than separable. There is also Stacey Alamo's concept of transcorporeality, describing how experiences always include several bodies and move through several bodies. A good example of this is Audre Lorde's book, The Cancer Journals, where the author describes her struggle with breast cancer as something that's not just happening in her own body, but is connected to so many other bodies, living and non-living. But we're getting off track a bit. Well, not that much, because all of these ideas are inspired by Deleuze's thinking and touch upon rhizomaticity, a word that I will describe in a bit more detail right now. The term rhizome was shaped by Deleuze and Guattari. A rhizome, and I'm quoting them right now, a rhizome as subterranean stem is absolutely different from roots and radicals. Bulbs and tubers are rhizomes. Thus, it is very different from the tree or root, which plots a point, fixes an order. The rhizomatic character of situations and social life is something that cannot be captured, only attempted to be mapped. With this idea, it becomes clear that the concept of linear time and space and fixed space do not do justice to our experiences in the world, because many experiences cannot be categorized or be separated from others. So, many experiences, we cannot separate time and space within those experiences. To imagine situations as entangled and rhizomatic means to accept that human actors cannot bring order into chaos or reduce complexity. Mapping rhizomatic entanglements with the music is called rhizomatic musicology, or rhizomusicology, for example. Right now, I am going to read 2 passages of the chapter The Cosmic Buzz of Insects from Rosie Braidotti's book, Nomadic Theory, The Portable Rosie Braidotti. Rhizomatic musicology attempts to make us hear the inaudible. It aims at a virtual sound space. This is a space of unexpected, speedy, unfamiliar sounds that facilitate unexpected connections and surprising encounters. As Deleuze suggests, art should not imitate. It should rather steal and run away, and in our case, come back with algorithmically distorted noise music or acoustic spacetime memory. The painter does not imitate the bird. It captures it as line, speed, and color. This is a process of becoming that deterritorializes both the artist and his, her, or their object. Against imitation, rhizomatic music aims at deterritorializing our acoustic habits, making us aware that the human is not the ruling principle in the harmony of the spheres. Most of all, it makes it possible for us to hear the multiplicity of frequencies that structure our possible worlds and the infinite generative force of the cosmos and as a whole. Deleuze famously said that chaos is not chaotic, but rather points to infinity as the nth power of being. Rhizome music, or nomadic sounds, evoke this dimension. Listening to it so as to be able to hear that particular frequency requires a transformation of our perceptual apparatus. We need to develop new faculties by recording the organs in our bodies. This relationship to chaos is also reflected in our work, Acoustic Spacetime Memory. Drawing from the nexus of noise music, we have a fuck art, let's make some glorious din attitude and a smidgen of countercultural rage. To quote Simon Reynolds in his book Energy Flash, A Journey Through Rave Music and Dance Culture. With that being said, we hope that you got a little inspired by rhizome music and noise music, and I guess we couldn't imagine ending on a better note than fuck art and make some glorious din, right? At least that's what we'll do right now. We welcome you to reach out to us and to leave questions and comments below. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of Rundgang.